Hey, it's Aaron, and today I am out in the middle of basically nowhere. Decided to go out to the farm because, well, shit was just getting a little bit too heated in the city. I gotta get out of there sometimes. No, I'm just kidding. I actually planned this trip for a little while. But anyway, while I'm out here, it just so happens that basically the entire world is setting on fire, and we're going to talk a little bit about it today. Specifically about day 3 of the Minneapolis riots. Now, if you haven't been keeping up on this, I have a video. I'll link it in the description box below and probably on an end card or something like that. Alright, so last night was absolute pandemonium, bedlam, as they continue to call it on Fox News, because while I'm out here, the only real news that I have access to is Fox News, and they were losing it the whole time. It was actually quite interesting to watch. They were having this sort of disconnect, where every time they were talking about the riots, or the uprising, as a lot of people are calling it, very fitting name, every time they were talking about that, they had to also dovetail it off of the whole thing where a police officer, a state-funded police officer, murdered slowly in cold blood the man that the whole protest was about. So they couldn't just outright say that the protests were horrible or bad or out of the blue or anything like that. They had to constantly talk about how this poor innocent person was taken down by these state officials, and that changed the entire framing of the whole story. Even me, a socialist or some kind of crazy far leftist watching that segment, was kind of thinking to myself, damn, Fox News isn't really being as propagandistic as they usually are. Propagandistic? You know what I'm trying to say. But throughout the broadcast, they did declare that the entire city was complete and total anarchy at one point, which I definitely did have to tweet out. That was a funny thing to say, and very fitting, because I think that it actually was. Last night, the protesters, that is, were able to achieve something that was monumental. They literally forced the police officers completely out of that part of the city. The police had to completely give up their stronghold. The police had to completely give up their stronghold. I believe it was the 3rd precinct. They had been guarding it for the last 2 days. They basically had nothing else that they could do. They couldn't keep the crowd under control, so they were stuck guarding this little tiny tower, and it was so pathetic, and they looked so weak in their top-heavy little black uniforms. It was adorable. But eventually, they got the order from on high that they had to evacuate because shit was getting too real, and they couldn't stay there any longer, so they evacuated with cheers of joy coming from the crowd. Hey, big guy. I got a bunch of dogs here with me. Hey, puppies. Where are y'all? Hey. I don't even know if you can see them. The sun's too bright. Hey, who's a little guy? Who's a little guy? All right, well, anyway. Crap, now I kind of forgot where I was. Anyway, so the stronghold that they had been protecting for days eventually was laid siege to, and they had to evacuate. They all crawled out of their little precinct, all dressed in their adorable little SWAT uniforms with all of their hilariously useless equipment, and they piled into cars, and I think buses as well, and they fucked off out of there, leaving the entire area to actually become an autonomous zone. It was the free territory, and it was beautiful. Moments after the police left, probably about half an hour after or something like that, the protesters were finally able to actually breach the front doors of the precinct and make their way inside of the building itself. They completely took control of the entire precinct, and I believe they expropriated a few goods. I definitely did see a few police belts wandering around after that, some riot gear, that sort of thing, in the hands of a lot of these protesters. And then proceeded to raise the entire building to the ground. Kind of a symbol, very symbolic of the way that a lot of people during that protest felt. They wanted to burn it all to the ground. A common slogan, a common thing that a lot of people were saying was that property can be replaced, but human lives can't. And that's really what this whole protest really boils down to. And a couple of other highlights that I wanted to mention throughout the entire night. We've seen a lot of damage, a lot of destruction, a lot of buildings being burnt down, a lot of places being looted, or a lot of goods being expropriated. I think that's the more correct term. There was what would seem on some news organizations to be a lot of pandemonium. But that all really depends on the framing, and that's a really important point, because when it isn't framed as complete and utter chaos, and you're actually in there and you're watching, like I was, the live stream from Unicorn Riot, there was no pandemonium. There was no chaos. There was a lot of destruction. There were a lot of people very angry, but it looked more like a juggalo gathering or some kind of large music event or a biker rally or something like that. It looked a lot more like one of those things than just complete pandemonium, bedlam, and everybody losing their minds and just fucking killing each other. Everybody was fairly reasonable. Everybody was fairly organized. They were fairly under control. They weren't causing a whole lot of damage to each other, definitely to property. And whenever something got set on fire, people were being fairly safe about it. They were saying, please get out of the area, get out of here. We need to make sure that everything is safe so we can burn this fucking building down. A lot of people were concerned that others would be hit by falling power lines when they got caught on fire, so they were moving people away from those as well. A lot of anger, a lot of animosity, a lot of people were really upset. One person at one point in time was actually able to grab a hold of a megaphone, and they were able to direct a lot of people in the middle of the chaos. And something that I always say, and I'm going to repeat it again here, if you, an anarchist, socialist, Marxist, communist, whatever it is, if you're able to grab a hold of that microphone and give the people some information that they so dearly need, for God's sakes, do it. Get out there, get active, get involved. And if you have the opportunity to grab that blowhorn, fucking do it, because you have important things to say, and you should. So definitely do that. Another really important point that I want to mention just before we end here is that most of the businesses, the vast majority of the businesses that were being destroyed weren't these small little mom and pop shops that were owned by, somebody in the local community. A lot of them were things like Target, like McDonald's, like Arby's, and that sort of thing. There were massive, large chain stores that nobody's really going to miss or worry about at all. And even though they burn down, they have insurance. So we don't really think that that's that big of a deal. But a lot of the other businesses, a lot of the small businesses that were immigrant owned or owned by small business owners and that sort of thing, they were completely spared. Because that's not what the point of the protest was. They aren't going in there to try to destroy the livelihoods of a bunch of people that work and live in that community. What they're trying to do is make a fucking point, and I think that point was very well made. At the end of the night, I do believe that the National Guard was called in, at least this morning when I woke up. I seen a lot of Humvees, Hummers, and armored vehicles, and military guard motherfuckers. Some people having uniforms saying state police on it. So obviously the escalation has happened. Like I was saying yesterday, the police did excuse me, the police are escalating the situation. They are making things much worse. The entire protest, it has been discovered now that it was initially started and fueled by police provocateurs. One police officer who started most of the violence and destruction at the very beginning was actually outed by his wife. She ended up saying, I believe it was his wife anyway, and she ended up saying that he was one of the ones that were caught on photo that were starting a lot of the problems. A police officer, go figure. And also there are a lot of other pictures circulating around where a couple of provocateurs were tackled down by a bunch of police officers, and they were apparently some of the ones that started the initial damage. If you look at their boots, they all happen to be wearing the exact same boots. The police and the protesters, the provocateurs who were starting the protest, they're police issue boots. They have a special little yellow stamp on the bottoms of each one of those boots. And the police were wearing the exact same boots as the protesters that were being tackled down. They were also police. They were doing that as a spectacle, as a show, to make it seem as though they were actually trying to stop these terrible people from escalating the situation. It was the police that escalated the situation. It almost always is. So definitely keep that in mind. The boots didn't look exactly the same because what they did do is spray paint a little bit of green on them and put some duct tape across, and they thought that would make it look different enough, but it didn't. There are clearly pictures out there where you can see that it's obvious that they're wearing the exact same boots. They are literally police trying to start problems. But that isn't to say that protesters didn't start problems as well. They most certainly did. And the very last thing that I wanted to say before we go, I'm going to leave us all on a bit of a high note. After the protesters gained access to the police precinct, to the police station, they burned it to the ground. Unfortunately, it was getting late where I was, so I wasn't able to watch the full thing. I only got to see the fire when it was still in its infancy, when it's still a baby, but boy, they grow up so fast. I was looking at pictures this morning, and the entire precinct was engulfed in flames. Hopefully I have my information right on that. I will double check. But yeah, it looked as though the entire place was gone. And the people, again, for the second or possibly third day in a row, won the day. That's incredible. That's amazing. I'm interested to see what's going to happen tonight. I think that things are going to get worse. People are... I'm gonna say this right now. If anybody is going to be joining with any of the protesters tonight, it's not going to be the same as the last few nights. They have exponentially increased the police presence there, and there is going to be a lot more violence. So if you're going to go down there, for God's sakes, get suited up, get geared up, make sure that you're wearing a helmet, make sure you're wearing pads, make sure that you're equipped with all of the things that you need. I have a lot of different videos where I talk about all of the different equipment that you do need. Definitely check those videos out. I'll link one of them in the description box below. And just please, for the love of God, be safe out there. I always say in these videos, I do not condemn nor condone any of the things that are happening with protests or with violence or anything like that. But I do want everybody that's getting involved to be safe, to make sure that you're helping your friends, you're helping your fellow protesters, and make sure you have all of the personal protective equipment that you need to stay safe. Don't wear paper masks. If pepper spray or mace or anything gets on paper masks, it can burn, so make sure that you're wearing cloth masks. Make sure that you're keeping in a backpack or something some milk of magnesia, anything to wash out your eyes or wash off your face or skin if you are attacked by some sort of irritant or some sort of toxic chemical. And just make sure that you're staying healthy, stay hydrated. Don't go balls to the walls the entire time. Make sure you're switching out with friends and that sort of thing. Try to stay safe, try to stay energized, and good luck to every single one of you out there. You're all heroes, and you're all doing an absolutely necessary job. So thank you very much for watching. My name is Aaron. If you do get a chance, please check out all the links in the description box below. Hit that little bell button because they're not going to tell you when I release a video, and make sure you hit the subscribe button because they're unsubscribing people every single day. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day.
Hi, I'm Dog. I'm going to explain some things. Alright, so if you happen to encounter pepper spray or anything that is capsaicin based, an irritant, it's really important to follow these 3 steps. It's super easy. Make sure to keep these 3 things on you. You need saline solution, soapy water, milk, or milk of magnesia. So what you're going to do is you're going to get the person, make sure they're calm, tell them what you're doing, always keep them aware because they're going to be entering into shock and you want to prevent that. So you're going to take the bottle of first saline solution, set it on the bridge of the nose and spray it downwards on the nose, down the bridge of the nose, making sure to make it go away from the face. Next, you're going to take soapy water and do the exact same thing. Don't rub it in because that's all you're going to be doing. And then the third thing you're going to do is you're going to take the milk of magnesia, or milk or any other dairy product, and you're going to rinse the rest of that out. That's literally all you have to do. Just make sure that you're not rubbing anything in. If you have a towel, dab it away, and always make sure the person is staying calm. And don't be using the milk sparingly in the end because that's going to carry away the rest and the residual of the irritant. If you'd like to educate yourself a little bit further on this whole procedure as well as other things that are really useful for protests and keeping yourself and other people safe, I got this information from frontlinewellness.org and it's under guidelines for treating exposure to pepper spray / chemical irritants. If you're a medical professional, you can get involved with this organization. It's totally run by the people. If you're not a professional, you can also get involved, but you can also represent them as people that are going out to keep people safe in a medical way. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good night.